Well, welcome to everyone here at HSO. My name is Tom Fitch, and it's my pleasure to host you or to be your host for this broadcast of the second HSO round of our Formula One 1979 series. Now, for the second round, we moved up slightly northward from where we were 2 weeks ago in Argentina. We moved to Brazil, Sao Paulo more especially, and just outside of Sao Paulo is Interlagos, a racetrack where we will be hosting our current round. The cars are currently doing their are finalizing the qualification runs, and while the cars are qualifying, let's maybe have a short look at the racetrack over here. We will not be running the current layout of the track, but we will be running the old 1970s layout of the track, which with 7.8 and something kilometers on the counter, it's about twice the length of the current layout. What I propose is that we maybe try to catch a car which is about to start a lap and have a look and try to find. Dan is finding. This is perfect. So let's follow Dan around for a round of the old Interlagos. Out of the main straight he goes into a double left-hander, Curva Una and Dua, which then leads on to a very long back straight. Yes, and of course he's stopping his car, so we'll have to find another car to do an onboard lap. We're driving here with Gérard Rion, who is driving the Ligier, who seems to be in the final twisty section of the track, which leads back to the main straight. So Gérard should be about to start his lap quite soon now. And then I can chat you through a lap of the old Interlagos, which was quite a daunting circuit for the drivers back in its day. Now, at the beginning of this broadcast, let me tell you that down here in Belgium we are currently in the eye of Storm Dennis. So I hope that my connection will keep up for the entire race. But if I get disconnected and the broadcast should be interrupted, you know that it's only some wind. And is Gérard heading? Yes, Gérard is of course heading. We're here with Mario Grasner on board of one of the Renaults, and Mario is heading for a lap. So he heads here on the main straight start finish straight into a first double left-hander. Turn 1, turn 2. Quite a fast affair as you can see. He then continues on the very long back straight, which is much longer than the Retta Opposta we used to have. And that leads into a second double left-hander, turn 3 and turn 4, which now leads up to another straight, and this straight actually leads back to a part of the track which is also comprised or included in the current layout, the Ferradura, except that where the Ferradura today is a right-hander, here it's a left-hander. So we're now actually driving on the current layout of the track, but in opposite direction. We're going into the Subida del Lago, which is now a double right-hander going uphill rather than a double left-hander going downhill. And we're now on the Retta Opposta, driving opposite direction of what the cars drive nowadays, into the Curva do Sol. But instead of banking off towards the Senais, we keep on turning right, very, very long right-hander, and we head for another left-hand 180-degree turn. That's something pretty proper to this track, is that it keeps on winding back and forth, back and forth. We're now on to a right-hander, and this right-hander actually leads up to Laranja, a very slow right-hander which connects to the twistier infield section, which is relatively equal to the infield section we still have nowadays in the current layout of Interlagos. So you have the very small, the Bico de Pato, the left-hander Juncavo, and people who drive at the new Interlagos will recognize this. The final left-hander Subida dos Boxes, and then it's on to the very long straight up the hill. And that's Mario Grasner finishing his lap. Now, as I already said, this track comes in at 7.8 and something kilometers. It's almost twice as long as the current track. And the course will be doing, or we will be doing 40 laps of this track, which brings the overall distance of the race to 315 kilometers. So it will again be quite interesting to see how the cars will behave, how the tires will behave, etc., etc. Now, maybe a quick look at the current standings. Fastest man around Interlagos for the moment is Mario Grasner in a Renault Turbo, and that's actually good news, because it seems that Mario may be the man to get a leash on Vladislav Zenkov in the Lotus, who was so untouchably fast both at Imola and in Interlagos, Buenos Aires, I'm sorry. Buenos Aires, where he was leading the race with a comfortable advance, but then lost a little bit concentration, lapse of concentration that cost him very dearly as he went off and basically destroyed his car, handing the win eventually to Michal Janak. Michal Janak, who clocked 4th time in his Ferrari here, with in between Vladislav and Michal, Daniel Faas in the second Renault. And at a look at it, times are much closer than they were at Buenos Aires. Gérard Réon 5th in the Ligier. Paul Velasco 6th in the Lotus. Greg Hunt 7th in the Wolf, but you should never discount Greg in the race. He managed to come home second in an eventful race for him in Buenos Aires. Mike Becknell in the Ferrari 8th. André Cunha, new Ligier recruit, 9th. Gabriele Del Piccolo, driving one of the Shadows, in 10th position. Bruno Chacon with the Brabham in 11th. Steve Parker with the famous Samson livered car, the Shadow Racing Samson livered car in 12th. Paulo Rodriguez in the second Brabham 13th. 14th, David Junt in the Lotus Rebake, which is a year-old Lotus chassis. Vladim Tashak, the brave man who's tackling the season in the Merzario, 15th. 16th, Thomas Matuszek in the Alfa Romeo, who was scoring in the points scoring position in Buenos Aires before he lost the car and couldn't finish. Honza Mild, Tyrrell, 17th. And that completes the field, at least as far as we have cars today. Now, having a little look at the drivers' standings in the championship. After one round, Buenos Aires, Mikael Janak is leading the standings with 9 points, courtesy of his win at Buenos Aires. Greg Hunt is second in the Wolf, remarkable performance. David Junt in the year-old Lotus Rebak, third with 4 points, and then follow Thomas Matuszek in the Alfa Romeo and Gio Nuvoli with the Ensign Cosworth, who both had very remarkable performances in Buenos Aires. Maybe another look at the track while the drivers complete the qualifying session. About a quarter of an hour of qualifying remaining. Now Interlagos, also known as the Jose Carlos Pace racetrack, Autodromo Jose Carlos Pace, is actually a very old racetrack. It was built in 1940 on land which was originally destined by land developers to develop a housing project. However, the 1929 stock market crash prevented the developers, or made that the conditions for a housing development were all but good, and so they decided to build a racetrack rather than housing. The design of the track was based on the Roosevelt Field Raceway in its 1937 layout, and the Roosevelt Raceway is a very famous, an illustrious raceway in Long Island, New York. Since 1973, Interlagos has been hosting the Brazilian Grand Prix. 1973 was the first of the Brazilian Grand Prix, which was mainly due to Emerson Fittipaldi becoming world champion for the first time in 1972. And you can see that this is not going to be an easy track for the drivers. It's one of those tracks where drivers tend to lose track of where they're exactly at the track. It's an endless succession of 180 degrees turns, and drivers tend to sometimes forget where they are exactly on the racetrack. So throughout the 70s, Interlagos stayed the home of the Brazilian Grand Prix. But then, of course, after the late 70s, early 80s, the new star of Brazilian motor racing was Nelson Piquet, and Piquet was not did not originate from Sao Paulo, but was from Rio de Janeiro. And so the Brazilian Grand Prix moved to Jacarepaguá, just outside of just outside of Rio de Janeiro, for a couple of years. It returned to Interlagos in 1991, but so no longer on the famous long layout that we will be running tonight, but on a much shorter layout, which basically after the start straight finish cuts to the Senna S towards the infield and then turns back through the infield section to the start finish straight. Maybe a nice thing to know is that Interlagos has one of the longest pit lanes ever used in Formula 1. It starts just before the start-finish straight and rejoins the main course after the Curva do Sol. At least that's the way it was in that it is in the new layout. In the old layout, it rejoined the track just before the first turn. And another peculiar thing about the pit entrance is that the pit entrance here is very fast and is therefore generally considered to be rather a risky affair. Now we're driving here with Vladislav Zenkov, and I propose that we stay with Vladislav to see whether he is able to better that time of Mario Grasner. He has a small half a second to gain on Mario, so let's stay with Vladislav to see where he gets there. One of the Ligiers cordially going out of the way there, making room for our fast Russian friend. Up, and he loses the cars in one of the 180 degree turns, so this is not going to be a fast lap for for Vladislav, and he retires to the pits. maybe if an administrator is listening down here, Adam Heckman, who had initially announced that he would not take part in this race because he wanted to go left-hand turning, I guess, just posted on the forum that his other race ended early, and so he asks whether he could still join this race. I'm trying to have a look here. We're now on board with Paul Velasco in the Lotus. And actually I now notice that what I was saying earlier about the course joining after turn, just before turn 1, was not entirely correct, as apparently they joined just after turn 2. Paul is getting up to speed here. On the back straight, very long run. These are the third and fourth turn. Pretty tricky because the fourth turn is actually a lot tighter than you think at first sight. There's a small right hand king then that leads into kind of a piff puff right left section, and that puts you into Ferradura. Ferradura, which in today's current layout is the first of two fast right-handers, but here is mid-speed 180 degree left-hander, which brings you up to two right-handers who lead up to the Reta Opposta. This straight is still part of the current layout, but in the current layout is driven in the opposite direction into the Curva do Sol. And let me assure you that 40 laps of this track is going to be something gruesome. This track, pardon my French, has something of a sneaky, twisting, bitchy sweep through the suburbs of Sao Paulo. Oh, Michael trying to improve on his third time goes off in one of the faster sections, and it seems like he blew his engine doing that. So I hope he won't do the same in the race. Oh, and Gérard Rion has now put Ligier on pole. What a fantastic result for the Belgian driver. So all those who were saying that Vladislav Zenkov was about to all those who were saying that Vladislav Zenkov would take this championship in a stranglehold seem to be in for quite a surprise, as Vladislav currently is only fourth on the grid and up to now has no points in the championship. One who has a lot of points in the championship is this man, driving Gilles Villeneuve's Ferrari from Czech Republic, Michal Janak, who took the win at Buenos Aires, and with it the 9 points and the lead in the current championship standings. And if there's a Minsk listening, Peter Lavac also asked whether he can join the race. If I were you, Peter, I would raise a question on the forum, or maybe send a PM to Frank, and I think they will be back to you quite soon. I think we still have about 6-7 minutes of qualify to left, so you could, if you would miss qualification, you could still join in warm-up, and well, with your capabilities behind the wheel of a race car, starting last, you can still achieve a very good result. And Michael does not improve on his time, he stays third for now. And that completes qualifying. So have a quick look at the standings, which are now becoming quite final. Gérard Rion would start from pole. Congratulations, Gérard. Félicitations, mon compatriote. Mario Gasner with the Renault will be starting second. Mikael Janak third in the Ferrari. Vladislav Zenkov fourth in the Lotus. And as I've already said, those who predicted that Vladislav would hold this championship in a stranglehold are now in for their money. Daniel Faas fifth in the second Renault. Paul Velasco sixth in the second Ferrari. Greg Hunt, very strong performance in the Wolf. Frank Verplanken, or Onan Min, is participating in this race. And Frank is driving a Williams, so a Williams in Frank's hands, that is a car to watch in the race. Then André Cunha in the second Ligier is in 8th position or 9th position. Gabriel Del Piccolo in one of the shadows in 10th. Mike Becknell in the second Ferrari 11th. Steve Parker is 12th in the shadow with the Samsung livery. Paulo Rodriguez 13th in the Brabham. Bruno Chacon 14th in the second Brabham. David Junt 15th in the Jero Lotus Rebak. Vladim Tasiak in the Merzario 16th. Thomas Matusek in the Alfa Romeo 17th. And Adam Heckman, who has made it into the race, 18th in the Williams. Karel Maszynenski now in the Tyrrell 19th. And Honza Milt in the second Tyrrell 19th. And with that, we have entered the warm-up session. So Peter, I have asked in the game chat whether you can enter the race. I will give you feedback as soon as I get an answer. Mike seems to say yes. Okay, Peter, Mike says that you can join in a McLaren. pole sitter, Gérard Rion, doing some laps on full tanks around Interlagos. And so while the drivers finish their warm-up laps here around the track, let's maybe have another look at some of the brilliant HSO past. And we are nearing the end of the warm-up session here. We have about 4 minutes to go. Maybe have a quick look at who turned the fastest laps in the warm-up. Well, again, Gérard Rion was over a second quicker than Vladislav Zenkov. Mikael Janak third fastest, Daniel fast fourth, Bruno Chacon. So with anything to go by, the race looks like becoming a straight out battle between the Ligier, the Lotus and the Ferrari and Renault. which is quite in line with the real life Grand Prix, which was won in 1979 by Jacques Lafitte driving Ligier, starting from pole position. Second was Jacques Lafitte's teammate Patrick Depailler, also driving for Ligier. Then came Argentinian Carlos Reutemann for Lotus. And then followed Didier Pironi and Tyrrell. In his turn, followed by the two Ferraris of Gilles Villeneuve and Jody Scheckter. The Renaults had quite a bad race here. Jabouille, best of the Renaults, finished 10th, one lap down. While as René Arnoux retired after a spin in lap 28, about 3/4 underway in the race. And most of the cars are now pulling into the pit again, except David Junt. He never seems to get enough of it. Some views of the old Interlagos. Interlagos literally mean in Spanish in between, or in Portuguese rather, in between the lakes. And so you see that inside the track there is water almost everywhere. Hence the name in between the lakes. Seems David Junt is the only car out on the track now. David had a pretty eventful race in Buenos Aires, but still managed to bring home third for Rebake. A podium finish, which also puts him on the podium for the intermediate standings in the championship. Maybe let's have a quick look again at those standings before we head into the race. Standings are Michael Janak in the lead with Ferrari, Greg Hunt in second for Wulf Cosworth, David Junt Lotus Cosworth, but that's actually a Rebake year-old Lotus in third, Tomas Matucek for Alfa Romeo in fourth, and heading off last of the drivers who managed to grab points in Buenos Aires, Gio Nuvoli with his very modest Ensign Cosworth, 2 points which he got for a fifth finish or a fifth place in Buenos Aires. So we are now getting ready to move towards the race. The drivers are starting to join the grid, and as they go for the warm-up lap, I will, as usual, walk you through your grid for tonight. So as they head off the start-finish line, in pole position, Gérard Rion in the Ligier. Second, in Renault Turbo, Mario Gasner. Third, from Maranello, Czech driver Michael Janak for Ferrari. Fourth from Russia, Vladislav Zenkov, Lotus Cosworth. Fifth from America, Daniel Vaz, Renault Turbo. Sixth from Portugal, now living in Berlin, and Globetrotter Excellence, Paul Velasco, Lotus Cosworth. Greg Hunt, Wulf Cosworth. Frank Verplanken, and Frank already seems to have a problem with the Williams. I don't hear a lot of sound coming out of that car, so seems that he already blew his engine. Well, that's really bad luck for Frank. He's got it running again apparently. In ninth, André Cunha, Ligier. Gabriel Del Piccolo, Shadow. Mike Becknell, Ferrari. Steve Parker, Shadow with a Samson Lion on its nose. Paulo Rodriguez, Brabham Alfa Romeo. Bruno Chacon, Brabham Alfa Romeo. David Junt, Lotus Rebak. Vladim Tachak, Merzario. Thomas Matucek, Alfa Romeo. Adam Heckman, Williams. Karel Marcinski, Tyrrell. Peter Lavach, McLaren. Gio Nuvoli in the Ensign, and it brings us back to Gérard Rion. I'm just gonna try and have a look now what's happening to Frank. Well, Frank seems to be driving again now, so I guess he had maybe a minor off and stalled the engine but managed to get it running again, and so I hope he will be able to rejoin the start grid and still have the benefit from that excellent 8 time he clocked in the qualification. And Gérard is meanwhile already back into the twisty infield section. I think he's now in what's nowadays called the Bico de Pato to the no, it was earlier in the twisty I think he's now entering the Bico de Pato. Yeah, and he now is back on the front straight, so he's heading towards the start finish. And let's hope the starting orders will be more smooth than we had them in Buenos Aires. And we are on the starting orders. And there, fantastic start for Gerard and Vladislav. He sneaked in mid, yes. Mario has had a very bad, very slow start, and then he hit. Yes, I think his race is already. Paul Velasco was mixed in that, but here we have now. There is Vladislav challenging Gerard for the lead. Greg Hunt immediately following in his wake, and Greg is going to challenge Vladislav for the lead into that very fast curve. There they come. Mikael Janak managed to squeeze past Gerard. So Gerard had a very good start, but then he seemed to slow down a bit and he had to leave. And Greg is in the lead. Incredible. Greg Hunt leading the Brazilian Grand Prix in poor Wolf Cosworth. And I propose we follow these cars for the first lap around the track, and once they have completed their first lap, that we then have a little bit of view of who's running where and which cars have already retired possibly, because that accident or the incident between Paul Velasco and Mario Gassner, who had made such a very good qualification result, didn't look like it would leave the cars undamaged. But Greg is not only leading the race, he's pulling away. This is just crazy. And Gerard is now back to his feet. He's clinging to Mikael in the Ferrari. Greg Hunt now into the twisty infield section. That's of course one of the challenges of this track, is that you have very fast long straights, but you also have this very twisty infield section. So you really have to make a compromise in the setup of the car when you have to compromise between speed and handling. Greg now back on the main straight for the first time, and of course here on the straight the Lotus of Vladislav is hitting back, or is pulling back up to Greg. But so, with one lap on the counter, it's Greg Hunt in the lead. It's then Vladislav Zenkov. And Vladislav is challenging for the lead here. But he backs off. Vladislav is going for the lead. Greg immediately in the slipstream. And Michael using the power of the Ferrari. So we had a change for the lead here. Vladislav Zenkov now leading for Lotus. Greg Hunt second for Wolf. Mikael Janak third for Ferrari. Gerard Rion falling back a little bit now in the Ligier, fifth. Sixth is the second Ligier, driven by André Cugno. We then have, it's Polo Rodriguez who's running sixth in the Brabham. And David tuned already up to seventh in the Rebake Lotus. Remarkable performance of David. Then we have Dan Vaas in the first of the Renaults. So I'm afraid that Mario Gassner, who had such a fantastic qualification result, has fallen back far behind. Here it's the first of the shadows, driven here by Gabriele Del Piccolo. Is that, yes, that's that's Adam Heckman in the first of the Williamses. We then have Vadim Tasiak in the Merzario, Bruno Chacon in the second Brabham, Peter Lavac working his way back up in the McLaren. Peter didn't qualify, he joined the race late, and so he started somewhere last and is now working his way back up. Knowing Peter, this may, yeah, but now it's Mike Bicknell moving up a place in the Ferrari. Peter Lavac McLaren. There we have the first of the Alfa Romeos with Tomas Matušek. And there is Paul Velasco in the Lotus. He's been thrown way back after that incident with Mario Gassner on the start. But at least he's still running. First of the Tyrrells, Karel Maczynski, the ensign of Gio Nuvoli. And then we have the first of the retirements. Steve Parker didn't last long in the shadow, and Mario Gassner, I was afraid that he would have retired. And so we're back with the leader, Vladislav Zenkov, who now seems to be pulling quite a gap to and Greg going very sideways there, which lets Michal Janak through, and Gerard also going through. So Greg lost 2 places there by oversteering on the exit of the turn 2, that was, I think. Vladislav now has a 2.5 seconds lead over Michal, who is about a second ahead of Gerard Rion. And Greg already seems to have used the best of his tires. And we're gonna stay a little bit with Peter Lavac, because he's looking for a way past that Brabham of Bruno Chacon. Of course, Bruno has all the V12 power of the Alfa Romeo in the back of his car, while as Peter needs to be content with a less powerful Cosworth engine. And there behind we have the ensign. Peter, of course, joined the race very last minute, so he did not really have a chance to put the McLaren up to his likings, and I guess he will be driving a very base setup, a very spec setup, which is not necessarily the best setup or the best for this quite specific track. And we just saw, looking back from Peter's car, we just saw Paul Velasco making quite a spectacular move on the ensign of Vadim. Now, if Paul makes it up or back to Peter, it's going to be interesting to see how those two, who will come out on top of those two. Not that much is changing up front. So I propose we stay with Bruno and Petter, with Paul Velasco also joining that battle in a while. Yeah, there Paul is already almost on Petter's tail now. But what's even more incredible is that Vadim in his poor Merzario is rather well keeping up with those guys. Mario just gave a short comment on his race on the forum, saying that the speed and the power of the turbo in the Renault allowed him to have a very good qualification result. But then, of course, on the start, before the turbo kicked in, he had some lag, which made him slow from the line, and he got kicked from behind, which cut off his engine, and he didn't manage to restart the engine, and so he had no choice but to retire. Oh no! Mike Bicknell has had a serious accident here apparently, and I'm afraid that's gonna end his race. Oh, we had a coming together. Ooh, yeah. I'm not sure whether he was trying to make a move there, but it looks like he was trying to make a move on Gabriele Del Piccolo in the shadow. Oh, I think maybe he got cut out by, well, no, they were racing for it. And I think Mike, this is on the Reto Oposta, going into the Curva do Sol. Ooh. Well, I think Gabriele might have left some more room for Mike there. Just my opinion, as a not very good driver. But I wouldn't be too happy with that if I were Mike. So, let's have a quick look at how much seconds Vladislav has already earned. Well, he's already close to 9 seconds in front of Mikael Janak. So qualification let us think that there might be a race for the trophy, but the way it's looking now is Vladislav having a very tight rein on the race with only 6 laps done. But here for second, Gerard and Mikael. That might be a nice battle for second place. Ligier versus Ferrari. Cosworth power versus Ferrari power. We're looking back for Michael Janak's Ferrari, and Michael will be seeing what we are seeing in his mirrors, and that's old fox Gérard Rion de Ligier crawling slowly back up to him. And behind Gérard has nothing to worry about. Well, this is a situation, Michael now seems to be pulling away slightly, but it's a situation where Michael is not under immediate pressure, but he has a constant psychological pressure nagging at him, that he knows that Gérard is just there, and that the slightest error that he would make in that Ferrari would allow Gérard to shoot straight past him. Well, Mike gave some insight into his accident, and it seems that there may have been some lag involved, as he seemed to have been seeing Gabriele in front of him, and then suddenly he was heading for a roll. So I'll take back the earlier comment regarding Gabriele not giving Mike room. Sorry for that, Gabriele. Apparently there was some lag involved here. And we're still watching on board with Gérard Rion trying to catch a Ferrari. Gérard has now just started his 8th lap. And Michael has pulled a little gap on Gérard, but the gap has now stabilized, so maybe Gérard is just saving his tires, taking it rather cool in this early stage of the race, and just hanging on, although here in the faster sections it seems that the Ferrari is quicker. Michael is now really pulling away, so it's going to be interesting to see whether Gérard can manage to reduce that gap a little bit in the more twisty section of the track, which we will be entering now. The track can actually be divided in 3 big chunks. A very fast part with the start finish straight, the first 2 turns, and then the very long back straight. Then you go into a section where it's mainly medium speed, and then you go in the final section, which is really a twisty infield slow section. Ferrari and the Ligier are now negotiating the mid-fast section with a lot of 180-degree turns. And I think they may now be heading, or they may now be starting or entering the slower inside section. And you see here, Gerard is coming back here. So conclusion for now is that the Ferrari is faster in the fast parts, where the V12 power will obviously help, but the handling of the Ligier seems better. If that translates to tire wear, Mikael may be running into troubles later in the race, when Gerard's tires might be fresher than the tires under his Ferrari. Remains to be seen. And then I'm heading to lap 9. Junt is now already up to 5th. And it seems that Peter Lavac did not manage to catch Bruno in the Brabham, which comes to something as a surprise, as Peter is a very good driver. I'll maybe tell you a little story about him later on, because his story of the last year is really a remarkable one. One that may serve a lot of people as an example. Paul Velasco in his turn is not getting closer to the McLaren. Andre Cunha in the Ligier has fallen back, so I think he must have had a spin or another incident. Then Gabriele Del Piccolo. Thomas Matuszek in the Alfa Romeo. And Gio running the Ensign, which really looks, if you look at it from the front, it really looks like one of those early 90s tower PCs you needed to run games like Half-Life 2 and Doom back in those days. Daniel Vaz in the Renault, still soldiering on. And that's it for the cars who are in the race. Retirements, we have Karel Maszynski, so we only have 14 cars left in the race. Oh, unfortunately Vadim has retired. Mike Becknell, we saw his retirement earlier. Adam Hackman, Steve Parker, Mario Gassner. Back with the leader. And here now the Ligier and the Ferrari are really close together again now. Mike now is commenting in the forum on my commentating, and he says that there was no lag, but he thinks that Gabriele just missed his braking point. And he also makes a funny remark that it's going to need a very well-equipped cleaning crew to clean his brains out of the barriers. I'm sorry to hear that, Mike. I hope you recover swiftly. And this just proves that the next step we need in these broadcasts is a TeamSpeak or Discord, so that we can interview people after their retirements. It's something we will work on with Ben Pollett towards the next race in this series. Next race in this series, which will be on the 1st of March on none other than South Africa's Ski Alarmy. And Randy Dubin has posted in the broadcast chat quite a while ago that he really misses the old Interlagos. Well, so do we, Randy. That's why we were so pleased that one of the mothers made this track specially for Air Factor 2 to allow us to run this race on this track. And now Gerard is really getting close to the Ferrari. So I think the handling on that Ligier is really a lot better on the Ferrari. And I'll probably here, I'm gonna try to have a look at this from Michael's car. I think we'll see Michael pulling away. Well, if Gerard manages to catch a good slipstream, he seems to, but it's apparently Gerard is much faster in those two fast turns at the beginning. And I think these guys are now heading into lap 10 now. They're already in the 11th lap. So with 1/4 of the race dealt with, let's have a little look at what the standings are. Vladislav Zenkov way out in front, almost 20 seconds over Mikael Janak in second in the Ferrari, followed close behind by the Ligier of Gérard Rion. Another 15 seconds behind them is Greg Hunt, soldiering on in the Wolf. David Junt is already back up to 5th in the Rebake Lotus. Then follows Paulo Rodriguez in the Brabham, and it seems that Paulo is gently closing in on David. Bruno Chacon, 7th in the second Brabham. Very good race of Bruno, who's keeping behind household names like Peter Lavac and Paul Velasco, but Paul now seems to be very close to Peter, so we'll have a closer look at this battle after we went through the field. André Cunha, 10th in the second Lotus. Thomas Matucek and Gabriele Del Pecco. Gabriele is in the pits. I'm not sure whether this is a a scheduled stop. Well, he's back on his way. He lost 2 places there. Ooh! Now that seems to have been lag. Gio just continues. And 1 lap down, Daniel Faas with the Renault, soldiering on. That's why I was saying that Bruno seemed to have distanced himself, but that doesn't seem to be entirely true. It really seems that these 3 are holding each other honest. Paul Velasco, 3rd of the little 3-band train. And he now really has the front row ticket, or the front row seats for the battle between Peter and Bruno. And this is Vladislav getting ready to lap Gio. Easy. Gio lets him by easily. And just have a little, oh, that's done. We just spun there with the Renault. Ahead and off. And let's follow these three a little bit. Seems like Peter really has his work cut out for him. Either he's putting pressure on Bruno, and when Bruno manages to get a little bit of a gap on him, he immediately has to watch out for Paul Velasco behind him. Now, I told you earlier that I was going to tell you the story of Peter's last year. Peter actually got a very serious disease, which was basically reducing his muscular power to nothing, and so he ended up barely unable to move anything. He was hospitalized for a while, and the good care of the hospital allowed him to recover from the disease. He got home about 3-4 weeks ago, where he could not walk yet, where he could barely move his hands, but he started working and recovering, and he's now back behind the wheel of his Simric and running here with us with the McLaren. Kudos to you, Peter, because what you went through last year is really an example for a lot of us. Must have taken courage of an extraordinary level to beat that disease and come back in the way you did. And I am certain that with that mentality, you have many race wins coming your way here at HSO or wherever else you may be racing. Oh, Peter goes wide, and oh, there goes Paul Velasco, the no mercy man. Paul is a brilliant motorsport photographer in real life, runs his own blog, GP247, where you will find all the latest news regarding Formula 1. And the interesting thing is that Paul now immediately shoots ahead towards Bruno. Bruno seems to have a much better traction than the two others. Out of the turns he really pulls small gaps, then loses a bit on the braking, but he seems to be very good on the exits. They're on the straight now. Here the Alfa Romeo power should help Bruno. And that's the other Alfa Romeo of Paulo Rodriguez into the pit. That looked like a scheduled stop because there was no apparent damage on that car. And I propose we leave these boys behind. And Junt made it past Hunt. That's quite remarkable. And meanwhile, Gerard is still trying to catch Mikael. But so I would dare to say that we now have 3 battles for position on the track. We have this battle between Gerard and Mikael. I'm pretty sure that Greg will not just lay down and let David escape. And then a little bit further down we have the 3-way battle between Paul Velasco, Bruno Chacon and Petr Lavac. So I propose we follow each of these battles. And Greg seems to have repassed David again. So maybe Greg had a little off. And of course, David Junt is Clockwork Orange. He's a Swiss clock. He has the position of an expensive Swiss watch. He's as regular as a metronome when he's driving his laps. He seems to be struggling with his tires a little bit. And we're now riding with Peter. Gerard has made it past Michael. Now, as I already told you, the next race in this 79 series will be on 1st of March at Kyalami. But even before that, we in the HSO Gold Star round, we will have a 1967 Formula 1 race with a fantastic 67 mod for Air Factor 2 and none other than Italy's Monza. And that will be on the 23rd of February. So if you want to take part in that, go grab a car. There are still a lot of cars available. And I think meanwhile we're close to a point where Oh no! Michael has blown his engine. His race is over. What a disaster for the Czech driver who had such a good result in Buenos Aires. And there we see the way of how Gerard went past Michal. They were coming up to lap Geo. And apparently Michal lost some time and momentum with lapping Geo. And Gerard just shot ahead. I think we're going to see it right now. They head into turn 1. And then Michal gets blocked a little bit behind Gio. While Gerard has a much better exit out of that line and sneaks in between the both of them. And I still have the impression that Michal's tires have a lot more wear than those of Gerard, and I think it's that the better tires allow Gerard to pull away this easily now. You see that Michal is struggling a bit with those tires, with that Ferrari. So let's have a little look at what's happening here. In the lead, Vladislav Zenkov, and I think with a crushing advance on the rest. Yeah, 21 seconds on Gerard. In second, Gérard Rion with the Ligier. Greg Hunt third, David Yunt fourth, then Peter Lavac, Bruno Chacon in the Brabham. So something must have happened between Bruno and Paul Velasco. The second Ligier, the Shadow with Gabriele Del Piccolo, the second Brabham with Paulo Rodriguez, Gio in his ensign, Thomas Matuszek in the Alfa Romeo, and indeed Paul Velasco has retired. Well, Michael left a comment on the forum, which I think is a bit of a heat of the action comment. He was not very impressed with Gio allowing or making him lose time, which allowed Gerard through. He then overcooked the tires, trying to catch Gerard back and skid off. So as we already predicted, the tires were a bit of a problem. Vadim also left a comment, and well, in typical Vadim style, says that he had quite an action-filled race before the dumpster, his car, or the way he likes to refer to his car, the dumpster, his Merzario, shut off and basically obliterated itself. But so now, almost 20 laps, halfway past the race. I think we're down to about 10 or 11 running cars, and there doesn't seem to be that much action on the track, so we will probably just watch a little bit and enjoy the beauty of Air Factor 2. Now, if everything stays as it is right now, I think Greg would actually become the leader in the provisional standings, because the current standings are the following. Michael has 9 points, but he will obviously store no points as he just retired with a blown engine. If Greg comes home fourth, that will give him 4 points, which will put him up to 10. And Vladislav nor Gerard, who will take 9 and 6th, already have points. So Greg might be looking at leading the championship at the end of this race, which would be, let's be honest, in that dog of a wolf, would be quite the achievement. Junt running fourth, also a remarkable achievement in that old Rebake. Michael is now saying in the chat that he's really not happy with Gio. It looks like the tires on that Rebecca also had their best, or also be past their prime. Oh, yeah, you have it, David going off. The grip is loosening quick now, so he may be heading for the pit soon now to get some fresh rubber. And the nice thing, of course, of the people retiring is that we get more and more watchers in the live stream. Because all the drivers who retire from the race, there's Petter. Would be interesting to see what happens if Petter catches up with David Junt. That could be a battle of two very fast drivers in. Well, Petter probably has the better car here, but still, as I told you earlier, knowing where he comes from this year, that might be an interesting battle. And there's Bruno, soldiering on in the Brabham. Very good result from Bruno, 6th, so that would give him hand him a point if he keeps it up until the end. Gabriele up to 7th now in his really modest shadow. Oh, and that's André Cugno, who's doing some off-track excursions with the Ligier. I don't think the Ligier will have loved that very much. Certainly not his tires. Yeah, and he's indeed coming in to the pit for fresh rubber. And that gives us a hand at looking at this pit straight, which is thus one of the longest ever, if not the longest ever used in Formula 1. And was also characterized for this very fast entry, which was considered dangerous after a while, and ended up with a chicane being added at the entrance of the pit lane. And Tomas Matušek is just as in Buenos Aires, soldiering on in the Alfa Romeo, and in the Buenos Aires had handed him 4th place when the finish flag dropped. So who knows what it will get him here. And there's Geo Intent. Little bit the same story as Thomas. They just keep on lapping quite regularly in their modest cars, but they finish. And if the nutrition is sufficiently high, they finish in the points. And apparently Geo Intent is the last of the running cars. So Paulo Rodriguez has retired. Paul Velasco, Mikael Janak, Daniel Fazes finally retired. Karel Marcinsin, Vladim, Mike Bicknell, we saw earlier, Adam Heckman, Steve Parker, Mario Gassner, and that completes our field. So we're now back with our leader. he's heading into his 23rd lap now. And has by now over a half a minute of advance over Gerard. But the one who seems to be edging in is Peter Lavac, who seems to be catching David Junt. Yes, and we were just telling that Peter was catching David, and he has him as David stopped for new tires. Peter now moves up into 4th position, which is a remarkable result if you know that Peter just joined his race at the last moment without preparations in a car that he's actually discovering as he's driving around. Fantastic result again. David's already back on track, and he's on fresh rubber now, so it's going to be interesting to see how fast he will be able to catch Peter. Bruno entering the Curva do Sol. Now Interlagos is called Interlagos, as I already told, because it's in the middle of lakes, but if you look at this track twisting in all kind of these directions, they could as well have called it interlaced, because it really looks like a pair of laces that really whirls and twirls around shoes. This is the Ferradura. and Gio seems to have had a little off there. And that was apparently another car involved. Bruno Chacon was involved there. So Bruno came into one of the 180 degrees. He started spinning, and Gio couldn't avoid him, so they both went off. Let's just hope that, well, apparently Gio is still running. He doesn't seem to have incurred damage, but unfortunately, oh, that's Tomas Matušek was unfortunately retired. And I'm afraid Bruno still seems to be running. Yeah, he's still running. He's up there in 7th now, yes, 7th. I think he may have lost a spot to Gabriele Del Piccolo due to that off. Meanwhile, the question is David catching Petter or not? Well, now what it seems as if Petter is pulling away. He now is, well, yeah, of course David had that pit stop, but David is now clocking 2:29s on those new laps. While as Petter seems to be slower, so if David can keep up those 2:29s, which he seemed to just have turned, he should be heading back to Petter quite soon now. So let's stay with David for a while and see what kind of lifetime he will put in now. Petter is now completing his 25th lap. Let's see, he's again going to do a 23, 40, 35, 2:36. So let's see what David does. 2:30. So David is now about 6 seconds a lap quicker than Petter. So that should become an interesting battle soon now. And would that already be David there coming out of the... Petter is now on the Retta Opposta. And would that be David back there? We're now heading into the more medium speed section. I would guess this is the place where David makes up most of his time. Yes, yes, that's Junt. Junt is closing in. And now they're heading for the really slow inside infield section. Jesus, Jesus. And now they're back on the start-finish straight, so let's see what Petter does lap-wise. Petter does a 2:34, slightly faster. What does Davy do? 2:31. So that's only 3 seconds faster, but still faster than Petter. Junt is closing. And when David puts his mind to something, it's always with determination. Oh, and there's a car out there. That's Andre Cunha with the second Ligier, and he retires. And David is now really closing in. I would not be surprised that by the end of this lap they're starting a full-out battle. And we have now 13 people watching us, which is a little bit less than Buenos Aires. While as in Buenos Aires we did not have this kind of quality battle, boys, so all come back, watch this stream. Hola. There you have David Junt versus Petr Lavac. This is Real Madrid versus Man City. Now on the straight, I think the McLaren should pull away here a bit. Petr should have some more power. What will he be clocking? 2:34, so he's really upping his game. David 2:32. And I think Petr will be able to stay ahead in this faster section, but we're now heading for the Ferradura. Then there's the Reta Oposta, which is still quite a long straight, but then through the Curva do Sol they head for a slower section and then an even slower infield section, and I quite frankly think that Petr will have a very hard time keeping David Junt behind there. David is on fresh tires, Petr ain't. And you see how he now is closing up. He's already going to have a look here on the Reta Oposta. Yeah. Peter is very smart about it and understands that it's not really useful to put up a battle. That might only risk him his excellent fifth position. Fourth actually. Which means that again someone has a... Well, Greg Hunt has retired apparently. Oh no, Greg is still running. He's fifth. But so let's stick with him because he will be heading back for those two boys. This is going to be interesting. So I think Greg has made a pit stop for fresh tires as he's back in fifth. So he's now also running fresh tires. And he will be reeling in Peter quite easily, but no doubt he will then go looking for David Junt. As I already explained, if Greg manages to finish third here, he will be leading the championship standings with 1 point over Mikael Janak, and as it stands now, 1 point over Vladislav Zenkov. And Greg already passed Peter. Peter was again very smart about that. He knew that he was on older tires and that there really was no point in fighting a Greg Hunt unleashed. Now, will Greg get back to David Junt? The Wolf is a better car and Greg Hunt is, well, maybe not as precise and as regular as David Junt, but he is certainly at least as fast. Yeah, Peter really is leaving these two. He's leaving these two go. Now earlier in the week David posted that he came to this championship to measure himself or to have battled it out with Greg Hunt. Well, he served as asked because he may be preparing. Yeah, Greg is very close now. The duel between those two is imminent now. And where we had Real Madrid versus Man United with Peter Lavac and David Junt, this is now Real Madrid versus Bayern München. And Greg has never been, he's not a patient driver, so... And it seems that David is already struggling with those tires again. But David is positioning his car very smartly. He leaves room for Greg but on the outside, so Greg is never really in a position to shoot, but now on the straight. Let's see what David clocks time-wise. Lap time is now 2:32. Greg 2:30, so Greg is infinitely faster, and that's also a little bit surprising because I thought that David would become immediately faster once past Peter, but he seems to clock those 2:32s, 2:31s. Again, very smart positioning of the car by David Junt. But Greg, you see, he doesn't block Greg, but he takes the inside line, forcing Greg to make a move on the outside line, and Greg then has to back off. And if Greg keeps on doing this, he will burn his tires, and you may rest assured that David Junt is clever enough to know just that, and that's the game he's playing here. He's again showing the world what a master strategian he is when he's on the racetrack. You see the last turns, David knew that Greg was too far behind to make a move. So he was going for the ideal outside, inside, outside line. And as soon as he knows that Greg is closer, he's taking much more protective inside lines into his turns. And if if I would be in Greg's shoes, I would just keep behind David here, bide my time in this slow, twisty section, make sure that I'm well positioned onto the main straight, the start-finish straight, and then just pull ahead out of the slipstream and make my move there. And I think that's exactly what he's going to do. They're now on the straight. Yeah, and there goes Greg. So this also, the ease with which Greg went past David seems to confirm what David was complaining about a little bit earlier in the forum this week, that the Rebake really was a lot less competitive than the Wolf. This is Gerard Rayon in second, and it's interesting. It will be interesting to now compare Gerard's times with Greg's. I don't think Gerard has already pitted for new tires. And Gerard clocks a 2:29. So let's see what Greg can put up against that. And I see in the chat that we have again have one of the godfathers of HSO watching us, Guillaume Siebert, who founded historic sim racing organization back in 2009 with Antoine de Motor and Frank Verplanken, who is still around as an administrator. Now let's have a look at Greg's lap time here. Gerard was in the mid 2:29s. What's Greg going to do? .229, almost flat. So he's about half a second faster than Gerard. And I think that this lap he will even be slightly faster again, because he will no longer be slowed down by David Junt. And he's about slightly over 10 seconds behind. With only 10 laps remaining, he will probably not be able to catch Gerard. So let's have a quick roundup of the current standings again. In a solid, almost unattainable lead, Vladislav Zenkov in the Lotus. I think it's fair to say that if Vladislav avoids incidents and keeps his focus, he will take this race home. In second, Gérard Rion. A very strong performance of the Belgian driver Foligier. And I think it's also fair to say that if he keeps his head on his shoulders, Greg Hunt will not be able to catch him, and so he will have the second spot on the podium. Third, Greg Hunt in the Wolf. David Junt, Rebake in fourth. Peter Lavach, McLaren, fifth. Gabriele Del Piccolo, Shadow, sixth. And Bruno just had enough. Seems that Bruno's tires have also had their best. And Gio in the ensign, 8. Last of the running cars. Now that André Cugno has also retired to second Ferrari, so with 9 laps to go, we still have 8 cars in the race. And no one seems to be any immediate threat to another, so I propose we just enjoy the beauty. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa! Vladislav makes a spin, and it seems he's tired. Oh, he's get hit by Gabriele now. This is. I think he lost something there. A bit of. I think a piece of the Lotus has stayed behind there, so. And Gabriele comes in the pit, so he must have damage. So the question now is, does Vladislav have damage? I will try to block the camera when he's at the third turn. The end of that long back straight. And now let's see how long it takes for Gerard to come across here. Wow, that's still a very solid advantage for. Yeah, he still at least has 20 seconds there over Gerard. Uh, 20 seconds. So he barely lost 10 seconds there. But still, maybe if he has damage to the car, he might have another spin, or maybe he may become slower. So if I were Gerard, I would keep on pushing now. And the spin will also have, well, it would break his rhythm of Vladislav. And it's something when you spin like that, it's something that can get under your skin. The very good drivers like Vladislav in general know how to handle that, but still. Well, he's still lapping 229, so That's maybe slightly slower than Gerard, but I don't think Gerard will be able to catch him. Gerard is now 1.5 seconds a lap faster than our friend Vladislav. So with some luck, who knows? I think it's only a small chance, but this thing ain't over yet. That's for sure. And that's a nice thing about this this track constantly switching back. It's a bit like the old Mexico. If you get lucky and close enough, you can actually see the car running in front of you. Even if you're about 10-15 seconds behind, you can see it, which can help a driver get motivation to pull that extra mile. But I don't think Gerard is seeing a lot of our friend Vladislav. Two 31.7. Two 31.3. Down to 18 seconds with 5 laps to go now. Except if Vladislav was into more trouble, I think Gerard is not going to be able to make it. Well, it always looks like a summer vacation at the beach. Interlagos, with the sun shining in the water. But so again, if Greg keeps up this third place, he will end up with 10 points and he will be leading the championship standings. With the Wolf may be a semi-decent car, but leading the championship with it is quite an achievement for Greg. And constructors wise, well, Wolf would also get ahead of Ferrari, and Lotus would probably come ahead or at the same level of Ferrari. Depends on whether the 4 points of David Junt will also count for Team Lotus, because that would then put Lotus at 13 points. But our friend Vladislav is now keeping his head on his shoulders, and he doesn't seem to be making more mistakes. Although think Vladislav has now just entered his last lap. And it looks like it's time that it's over for Vladislav. But, well, I think it's safe to say at this point that we're looking at the winner of our Brazilian Grand Prix from Russia, Vladislav Zenkov, in the Lotus Cosworth Chukichi-Chikuchu. He's putting a lap on Petter, but still a remarkable achievement from Petter, who will finish 5th here in a McLaren. After having recovered from an awful disease only 4 weeks ago. And I think after today's race, many will fear that it is an image that we may see a lot this season. Vladislav in a very lonely lead, heading for yet another victory. And there we have our race winner, heading for the win. Or does he have one more lap to go? Yeah. And you have to give it to Gerard. He still kept on fighting and he managed to close the gap down to 18 seconds. Helped to a large extent by Vladislav's spin earlier on in a misunderstanding with Gabriele. I don't know what, but this this British racing green livery of the Lotus combined with the Martini colors, it always makes me think about these English chocolates after 8, where they put mint in the chocolate, but I don't think they put in Martini in the chocolate. Now, I don't like Martini, I don't like liquor in chocolate, so chocolates filled with Martini, that must be about the most horrible eating experience one can get. The after 8 Lotus of Vladislav Zenkov, heading for his first real win of the season. He won the non-championship race at Imola with a crushing lead. He was leading the Argentinian Grand Prix at Buenos Aires with an impressive lead, but then had a lapse of concentration and ended his race with a broken Lotus. But here at Interlagos, it looks like nothing will stop him from winning. Entra. I think he's heading on the start straight for the last time. There it is. One more time past the pit entry. And he goes close to the wall. Yes, sir. Leader and winner, Vladislav Zenkov. He grabbed the lead in the third or the fourth turn and he never gave it up again. There, a remarkable performance of Gérard Rayon de Ligier, who comes second, grabbing 6 points for Ligier team. Congratulations, Gérard. There, the new leader in the championship standings, Greg the Hunt. There was a time when they called James Hunt James the Shunt, but Greg the Hunt has never been a Greg the Shunt. He was fast from the first day, the first race he drove at HSO, and he has been fast in everything he has driven, on every kind of track, in every kind of series. I remember him watching last year in the Formula 1 1971 series, how he was throwing an old March, I think it was, or an old Brabham around the Montjuic circuit in Barcelona. It was an incredible spectacle to behold. And so there it is, onto the straight. Bronze medal in the pocket, and with it 4 points, which will hand him the provisional lead in the championship. Another remarkable driver, David Junt, Swiss clockwork precision. It's a term I will probably use many times this season, because there is no better way to describe how regular David can drive even a shit heap of a car like the Rebecca around the track. And that's fourth for David, which I think makes David and Greg Hunt the only two cars who have scored points in both of the two races. So Petter fifth, fantastic result for Petter Lavage, fifth in the McLaren, a car he basically discovered while taking the start. And in sixth, well, amazing with such a bad car like the Shadow, Gabriele Del Piccolo. And then seventh, Bruno Chacon, Gio 8, no points for Gio this time, but who knows, he may have better luck in the next races. Again, the second Ligier, André Cugno, Thomas Matucek in the Alfa Romeo, Paulo Rodriguez in the second Brabham, Paul Velasco in the Lotus, the very unlucky Mikael Janak in the Ferrari, who could have come second here and solidified his lead in the championship, but things turned out otherwise. Daniel Vaz in the Renault, one of the Tyrrells, and so on. Now, the next race here in this series will be on March 1st at Kyalami, but before that we will also have an HSO Gold Star race at Old Monza with the 1967 cars. And if you are a lover of Grand Prix Legends, I would urge you to go and get a car for that race, because that's going to be a real step back into melancholy. So, for one last time to this evening, some of the great moments in the past of HSO, and with that, a very good evening from Interlagos, Brazil. Hope you enjoyed the show, and hope to see you all in hopefully a sunny South Africa.